Welcome to another episode of the Harder to Breathe podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dusik. I was the founding drummer of Maroon 5, but I'm now a licensed therapist, author, and mental health advocate. On today's show, we have voice actor Sam Riegel. We have a great conversation with him about a lot of the triumphs and challenges he's faced in his life as a voice actor, voice director, long career in this field. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Duck Maillard. How you doing, Duck?
Another voice actor with not as long of a career as Sam, but yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I was just telling you before we pressed record, busy week, lots of balls in the air.
Yeah. Speaking of balls, I got to give a shout out to the minor Marlins, my son's team. We are in the playoffs now, in Little League baseball. We were down 10-0 with 2 outs, which in Little League, if you're down 10 runs after the 4th inning, you get mercied. And we scored a run and we came back to win 11-10. So
amazing.
And my son went 2 for 3 with 3 ribbies, scored the winning run. I mean, I'm not going to shout at it, but
that's what
it was a great
most,
effort.
Right?
It's a really, you know what I got to say, like it's a really cool. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Little League is a very easy metaphor for life in terms of we're setting up these young men and women to see what the benefits of working as a team are. Baseball's the ultimate team sport, But I mean, 4th inning, we were down 10-0. Those kids are all in the dugout. Everyone's got their head down. Everyone's depressed, and just seeing them start to believe and start to realize, hey, we're scoring runs all of a sudden, and we can do this. And it's just a beautiful thing to see, because the baseball isn't always the highest quality, but like I said, the metaphor for life is right there in front of them. And I love being a part of it. I love being a coach and seeing it happen in real time. So it's a cool experience. I mean, I know you had tons of experience in Little League and in baseball. You probably remember those feelings.
Yeah, I agree that baseball is a great metaphor for life, and that's why I always loved it. When I was about 6 years old playing t-ball, I remember thinking to myself, God, this is a great metaphor for life.
Right? Kids always are so cognizant of that type of stuff. Yeah.
No, but it was the challenges and overcoming the challenges, and I mean, baseball, you lose more than you win. I mean, you fail more than you succeed, right? And in no game is it more true that you win some and you lose some, right? And you have to figure out how to just keep moving forward and not let it get you down too much, which takes resilience, right?
That's true. Yeah. Speaking of balls in the air, the Newton's pendulum, the thing that executives have on their desk with the balls collecting back. And it's a good, it's zen. It helps you see how one thing can affect the next. I think this is a pretty apt example. This is the Newton's pendulum that sits on my desk now because of, the way my son... It's completely tangled and just dead, but I keep it here as a reminder of like, hey, even when things feel crazy, you still got all the balls in the air. They're just in a different configuration. So
that is the perfect metaphor for life
for my
life,
now. That's for sure. Yeah. It's funny. Sam, our guest today, Sam Riegel, we were talking about, the difference between when things get tough, whether you face them head on or whether you sort of divert your attention to something that you can affect positively. And I'm curious, as a therapist, Ryan, where do you find that balance where if a client is avoiding dealing with problems versus, like you say, if someone's watching the news and the news is just pissing them off, you say, don't watch the news. Where do you find that how do you find that balance of telling somebody, how much they need to approach this problem head on versus how much do you tell somebody to find another route or find something that makes you happy and leave that stuff alone? You know what I mean? It's got to be a tough call.
It is. And it's a case-by-case basis. Obviously, you have to sort of do a damage assessment. It's like, well, how much is engaging in this thing serving you or harming you? Because there are things that we think are really important, and if we stop doing them, something terrible is going to happen. And it's like, if you stop watching the news, 8 hours a day, is it really going to change your life that much? How is it really benefiting you to be engaging in something that's just making you angry and negative and depressed? And then the flip side of that, well, if you disengage completely, are you then just kind of burying your head in the sand?
Right.
But I think that it depends on the person, depends on the situation. But I think that what you have to sort of assess as a therapist is is somebody dealing with reality and making a decision in terms of how to best navigate that reality? Or are they essentially avoiding something and by doing so causing more harm?
Mm.
You know, because I mean, we get into this conversation with Sam, and it's an interesting one. To a certain extent, it's adaptive. You know, we there's a reason why we compartmentalize things. There's a reason why we, you know, sort of pivot. You know, but at the same time, that can be disruptive if we're not dealing with something that needs to be dealt with. And so, if there's something going on and you're just not facing the reality of it, or you're living in some kind of delusion, that better be really serving you in a positive way. Otherwise, it's probably harming you. Right.
It's something that I deal with in my marriage so often, in the way that my wife and I approach disagreements and arguments differently. I very quickly go to the, like, I'm going to go take a walk. And she's very much like, no, you're not leaving this house until we have resolved this argument. And I don't feel like I'm avoiding it. I feel like I see the benefit of taking 10 minutes and taking a breath. And she sees the benefit of, like, no, let's get through the shitty stuff now. Let's work through the muck. Let's not give up while we're, you know, and both have merit. And I never can figure out how to make her see my point, and she can never make me see her point, you know?
Well, I think the key in that sort of situation, I always tell my clients that are talking about relationships, or if there's a couple in therapy together, it's best to have those conversations in terms of how you approach conflict when you're not in the middle of the conflict, right? Wait until you're in a moment where you're both calm and in a place where you're able to communicate in a healthy way, in a positive way, in a respectful way, and understanding each other. And when you do that, you can do sort of a more objective assessment of how those kind of arguments go. It's like, well, when we try this, how does it go?
Yeah.
When we try to hash it out, we're both angry and we're just going to have the argument and get through it. Does that end well? Do we resolve it? Does it lead to something positive, or does it always lead to just conflict that then carries over for the next 3 days and you have resentment that builds up? And like, what is the ultimate effect of choosing that route versus when I do take a breather, when I do step away and say, look, I'm angry right now. Let's take a breather. Let's come back when we're in a better place. Then what is the effect? Are you able to have a more productive conversation than, 6 hours later or whenever it is? Or do you end up avoiding the issue? Do you end up not resolving the issue? So doing a sort of post-mortem, when you're able to be objective about it and be more calm in how you approach it. And then having a strategy for when these things arise in the future, because it's better to be proactive than reactive. If you wait until the conflict to try to instill some great way of communicating, it's probably a little bit late. It's best to come up with a way that you're going to, a rules for engagement sort of thing. Yeah. It's like, well, when this happens next time, we know from prior experience, it's best for us to just hash it out. That actually does lead to the best resolution. Or, we know from prior experience, nothing positive is going to come for that. Yeah. So I know you want that, but you also know that if we step away, we are going to resolve it, and it's going to be in a better way.
I'm smiling because we've tried that. and in theory, it's great. But in the heat of battle, and I'm not going to heap it all on my wife, but she likes to argue. And so in the heat of battle, it's very difficult for her to say, okay, this is what you need. I'll step back, because she is like, nope, let's,
Well, that could be a whole other thing that's going on. I mean, look, you could look at human beings and their relationships from a lot of different perspectives. One is the system's perspective, which is you can't separate the individual from the system. And so it's a dynamic thing that goes on between two people. But you can also look at it from the individual perspective. It's like, what function is that serving for her specifically? And I don't want to assess or diagnose Jess without her present to be able to be a part of the conversation, and she's not my client. Right. But it might be serving some functions for her, why she engages in that way and what she gets out of it. There is an adrenaline rush that comes from conflict, right? And for some people, if you grew up with conflict, it's what you equate with love. So it's like, if you're not engaging with me in that way, if you're not getting angry back at me and we're not yelling and screaming, I don't know that you love me. That's the way I know that you care.
The passion.
Right. And I don't want to dismiss that or say that that's unhealthy. I think that actually in couples therapy, they've done studies on this. The couples that come in that are yelling and screaming at each other, the ones that are high conflict, high emotional expression, actually fare better in therapy than the ones who have gotten to the place of emotional shutdown.
Yeah, they've given
and
up.
just because if you're at least if there's passion there, if there is a willingness to engage, even if it is negative or angry, as long as it's not over to the point of
right.
physical violence or that kind of thing. But if it is, just a lot of emotion, it means that you guys do care. It's just that you need maybe healthier tools for how to engage and resolve something. But individually, we all carry with us our past and our past relationships and our formative relationships and why we engage in the ways that we do. And for somebody that does pursue in that way, it's ironic. The pursuers and the withdrawers, that's the pattern in relationships a lot, tend to find each other, right? And it's unfortunate because the pursuer wants the withdrawer to engage, but the withdrawer by nature, the more you pursue, the more you're going to run away.
Sure.
And then so what happens is the more you withdraw, then the pursuer gets more frustrated because you're not doing what they want. So they pursue even more, and that makes the other one withdraw even more. And so it becomes something that over time escalates to the point where this pattern sort of is self-perpetuating and hard to get out of. And so it's individual work and it's couples work. But, I don't know if you guys have ever tried couples therapy, but it can be a helpful way to kind of understand your individual patterns and why you have certain choices in the ways that you like to engage. Yeah. And then what the dynamic is between you that's evolved because of your individual.
There is a great deal of self-awareness in each of us. I mean, we both are aware of our individual, the way we like to deal with conflict. And we are also aware of sometimes the incompatibility of those two together.
Sure.
And to our credit, those arguments, they never linger for 3 days. I mean, whether I get my way and I get to walk away, or whether she gets her way and we hash it out, we always get to that resolution in the same way. And we can both look back and go, that could have been handled better. Or and she goes, I know, it's just in the moment. So to our credit, we know we haven't done couples therapy. Not that we don't need it or that we do need it, but just we haven't ever done it. But like I said, it is a dynamic that after 20 some odd years, we know how the ins and outs of it. It still doesn't make it any more pleasant when we're in the middle of it. But
well, what you're describing is not terribly unique. I mean, a lot of people that are in long relationships have that dynamic, and you're not describing anything that sounds like, thoroughly toxic or
rocky waters ahead.
No. But, I mean, you want to be self-reflective, and it sounds like you guys are, but, there is a high that can come from intensity, and you feel that adrenaline rush, and you feel like whether it's I need to be right, or it's I need you to hear me, or I need you to show me that you care, or whatever is going on that's being fulfilled by that intensity. Is a good thing to be aware of, at least, if not work on, and sort of, and then for what's happening for you, why are you just being logical? Are you just thinking, well, the logical thing to do here is for me to disengage so that we don't have an unproductive conflict that just creates resentment? Or is that are you Mr. Spock in that moment? Just big.
No. I think what I do is I see the brick wall coming, where I go, we're reaching the point of no return, where we're stopped. We're not arguing about the thing anymore. Now we're just mad at each other, and we're going to get bit. And I just go, you know what? Let's just stop now, cut our losses, and come back in 10 minutes. But again, that doesn't go well with my wife. But I will say one of the added benefits is, as I try to do this and travel from room to room to get away from the argument, I clean. Like, I'll fold laundry in an angry way. Like, well, yeah, you just keep saying that. Or I'll go and I'll wash dishes. And at the end of the argument, I go, wow, this place is spotless. This is great. So there are good things that come out of it. Something that our guest talks about today, finding the silver linings and some negative stuff. So let's get to that conversation, shall we?
Yeah, I was really happy with this conversation. I didn't know Sam. Obviously, you did beforehand. But he's a likable guy, and I'm just always impressed with people that are willing to talk about difficult things, not just that they have gone through, but that they currently are going through.
Yeah,
and that's something we've been talking about lately, about making more of a focus of the show. It's like, it's one thing to talk about things that were challenges that you've overcome, and like, what was the takeaway? What did I learn from that experience? It's all great and inspires hope and offers tools, but we all have challenges we're dealing with in the present moment, some greater than others. And Sam has been dealing with some really heavy, some stuff that is existentially important in his life.
Yeah.
And so his willingness to engage and really be vulnerable about that was great. So Yeah, before we jump into the conversation, if you'd like to send us any comments or questions, our email address is hardertobreathepodcast@gmail.com. Anything else you want to share before we jump in?
I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Obviously, if you're listening or watching this show, you're probably going through things and are looking for some, support, or looking for some like-minded individuals who are going through things as well. So if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, on any of the audio platforms. It really helps us. It helps get our show out there to more people who could benefit from hearing it. So please, like I said, subscribe to on all those platforms, and that way you'll be kept up with our new episodes and new guests every week. So we'd love to hear from you.
All right. Without any further ado, here's our conversation with voice actor Sam Riegel, right here on the Harder to Breathe podcast. Sam Riegel, welcome to the Harder to Breathe podcast.
Great to be here.
Wipe the sleep out of your eyes, little boy.
I know.
We're ready to go.
I just delivered my kids to school, walked the dog, ready to go.
Ready to face the day.
Uh-huh.
Love that. So you guys, Duck and Sam, you have a bit of a history together, it turns out, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I've been in Sam's closet recording for years.
Is that true? Yes, you came to my closet a few times.
Yeah, when I first moved here, Sam and I worked together in New York for years doing Ninja Turtles and shows like that. And then when I moved here, Sam, you were already here.
Yes.
And were you voice directing already at that point? Or were you just sort of helping out with stuff? That's why I came to your
When I
place?
first moved here, oh, yes. So I guess I moved here. We were doing stuff for 4Kids Productions in New York. Then I moved here and I built a tiny little, it wasn't built. I used a closet with a bunch of sweaters to be my recording booth for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other shows that I did for this New York production company. And then occasionally they would call me when some of their New York actors were out in LA and needed a place to record. And so they would come over to my house and I was directing some anime at that point, and so they trusted me for some reason to direct you guys on various shows like Pokemon and Ultimate Muscle and different shows like that. And so they would come in and I would stick them in my closet with my clothes and we would record for a couple hours and then I'd say goodbye.
It's beautiful sound quality and beautiful fashion sense, if I may say.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
I've told Duck in the past that I, at certain points in my life, fancied myself somebody who would be good at voice acting. And it wasn't until I started spending time with Duck on air and seeing the way that he could throw his voice and do things that were much more involved than anything I could do that I realized, oh, this is a craft. It's like, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there like, I could do that.
Sure. It seems super easy because all you need to do is speak English, basically, to do it. But it's remarkably hard, especially for folks who have never done it before. And so nowadays I do a lot of voice directing, and I try to coax good vocal performances out of them. I bet you would be good at it. You're a professional musician. You're used to emoting with your voice, and actually like rhythm and dynamics are very important to voice acting. And so I find that musicians are pretty good at it usually.
Good mic technique.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I did do the audio book for my book, which was a lot of fun. People warned me that it was going to be a really intense experience, that you're just basically reading out loud all day for a week or two. It was kind of that, but it was fun. It was fun. I mean, I found it like being able to emote and act without the visual element, just focusing on the sound of my voice. And as you said, the rhythm and the pacing of it, it kind of allowed me to click into a very specific part of the emotive experience and the acting experience, which if I were thinking about what I'm doing with my hands or my facial expressions, I might not have been, what am I doing with my hands? Yeah. So
recording audiobooks is like one of the hardest things to do because it's, after a while, your mouth just turns to mush and words stop sounding like words, and it becomes really an exercise in stamina more than like a performance, and it can be not fun. But with your own words, I bet it's much, much easier.
So we skipped right over the mention of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now that's a whole generation grew up on the Turtles. So I got to hear if you guys have any stories from that part of your life working on that together.
Sam probably has more stories than I do. I was Gungeon leader number 3, and I would kind of fly in for 3 lines. Sam voiced a slightly more important character.
I was Donatello from 2003 to 2010. We ran a long time, and it was so great. It was my first big animation role that was original animation, and I love the show. I love the character, and worked with some really great people, and many of whom I still am good friends with today and see either at conventions or out at dinner occasionally. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. In fact, one of the other turtles I'm supposed to see later today. So,
which one? Which turtle?
I can't say. No, Leonardo.
Okay.
What's that like? I imagine being a part of a world like that where there's, between the turtles and then you are in the Dungeons and Dragons world as well. The community around these types of cultural touchstones, you must have a different sort of experience than the average person who's just observing from afar, going to these conventions, being somebody who people look to as a voice that's at the center of these things. What is that like? It's a world that I'm not that familiar with.
It's wild. I mean, the convention thing is a whole new realm that we're all exploring. Duck, I don't know if you go to conventions.
Not too much, no, because like I said, I was never a kind of a touchstone voice, of any particular character. I've had some people interview me about those shows, and occasionally we get some fan stuff. But no, I've never done any of the conventions. I'm bummed. I want to have that experience.
It's fun. It's fun. You meet a whole bunch of people from all over the world who really have a passion for what you've done and are happily there to explain to you how you've impacted their lives. So it's really great. Like you meet people who say, watching your show got me through a tough time, or hearing you joke with your buddies on your D&D show helped me and my father bond again after years and years. And it's super cool to see and to experience how you're changing and affecting people's lives that you would have never known otherwise. I will say that going to these conventions is also exhausting because all of these conversations you have with people are emotional on some level, whether it's just like, hey, I think you're really cool, sign my picture, or you got me through, leukemia treatments or whatever. Like they're all very emotional in some way or another. And so over the course of a whole day and then a second day and then sometimes a third day, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's a wonderful problem to have, obviously, but by the end of a weekend, everybody's just so drained from the experience. But it's wonderful. It's so fun, and it's a good reminder that like everything that we do is listened to by someone and affects them.
You forget, and Ryan, sometimes we get reminded of it, fans of this show talk about it, that the thing that we were doing in our 20s, whether it's Maroon 5, whether it's Ninja Turtles, which was just the natural thing that we were doing it for us. And it's a touchstone for so many people that, like you say, because it was happening when they first fell in love or when they first had heartbreak or anything like that. It has so much more emotional resonance than sometimes we realize. And we're reminded of that constantly by people who reach out and give us that kind of feedback. It's a sobering reminder of how important art is to people.
Who knew? Art is good.
So, Sam, did you grow up a D&D kid? Was that a part of your world, or did you discover that?
No, not at all. I started playing D&D when I was... This game that I play, I'm in this thing called Critical Role. If people are just tuning in and don't know anything about this, I do this thing called Critical Role where me and a bunch of other voice actors play Dungeons and Dragons and other games, and we broadcast it on Twitch and YouTube and our own channel called Beacon, and people watch us play. And I had never played any tabletop role-playing games until this group, and we started playing about a decade ago. And one of us just wanted to try it for his birthday. And I think 3 or 4 of us had played before. Obviously, the guy who is our leader, our dungeon master, Matt Mercer, he had played extensively for decades and decades and was master. But I had never played before, and several of my friends had never played before. And we started up and just realized it was just like improv. It was just acting and stuff that we were used to doing anyway, acting with our voice and throwing ourselves into a character and a story. And it was so fun. It was addictive. So we just kept doing it. And then we started broadcasting it and people started to watch. And now it's become a whole endeavor. It's a business. We have employees and a studio and an office space and merch and comic books and an animated series and a second animated series that's going to debut later this year, and all sorts of, I wrote a book, all kinds of stuff, all from just a bunch of friends getting together to play a game that we enjoyed playing with each other.
That's great. I love that. You know, I talk a lot about how where I'm at in my career now was not something I had sort of a 5-year plan for. There was no roadmap to end up doing this podcast, for instance, even writing my book or becoming a therapist and the speaker and all the stuff that I do. It just kind of evolved. It was the next logical step or just an exciting thing that was an outgrowth of something else that I was doing that led to each thing that I'm doing. And I know that you started out, you did musical theater as a kid. You have you did Upright Citizens Brigade. You've had a lot of different avenues, and you have siblings that are in the entertainment business in different areas as well. I can't imagine that when you were a kid coming up in that world that you imagine you'd be playing Dungeons and Dragons on film and that would be your career. Did it just sort of evolve naturally? Did you have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan that just kind of changed, or what was the process?
I've had lots of 5-year plans that have changed over the years. I think growing up as an actor, as a kid actor, my mom, for better or worse, I think mostly better, instilled in us this sort of thing of like, never say no, because you never know what one thing might lead to. And mostly that has served me very well. It's a great sort of philosophy in life in general. It's what they teach you in improv class. Your first day in improv class is just say yes. And it's a good life philosophy. If someone offers you an opportunity to do something you've never done before, just do it. Just try it, because you never know if you'll love it or if you'll love it more than the thing that you're already doing. But yeah, so for me, I started off as an actor, a stage actor as a kid, and then I grew and was a gangly young adult and couldn't get on camera roles. So I just said yes to some voiceover stuff, and that led me into anime, and then that led me into video games. That led me into voice directing. Then I really wanted to do writing, so I came out to LA to be a writer. It worked decent for a few years, but it wasn't like the big thing that I had hoped it would be. But I said yes to other opportunities and found myself directing animation at Disney and doing sketch comedy and doing improv comedy. And eventually that led me to this group of friends that, someone said, "Hey, do you want to play D&D?" And I said, "Sure. Yeah, let's do it." And then doing this show over the course of the last decade, it's really shown me that everything that I said yes to prepared me for this, because I'm good at improv. I'm good at voices. I'm good at writing. I'm good at acting. I'm good at playing games. I can be silly. I can be, everything that I thought was either a failure or a side quest in my life led me to the thing that I do best and will probably be remembered most for. And it wouldn't have happened if I had said no to any of those other things. Now, not saying no to things is also a bad thing in life too. Even to this day, I get asked, "Hey, will you come do this project that's going to rip apart your voice and make your throat bleed. And it also, by the way, it also doesn't pay very much. And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go. Let's do it.
It's great exposure, though. Great exposure.
Yeah, exactly. I should probably say no to some things, but for the most part, yes, has been a good thing.
And now we sort of are glossing over. You're like, I was some childhood acting. Like, let's touch. You were in Les Mis. All right. Yeah. So, and you were in the touring company. Did you come to Broadway as well?
I did 2 different touring companies of Les Mis. I was in the first national tour in Washington, D.C., and then I did the third national tour, which toured 26 different cities across America. And then it's one of my biggest regrets in life. Right after that tour, I went to like my family. My grandparents had a farm in Virginia. I went down there to just relax for a couple of weeks with my family and swim and hike and stuff. And when we got back from that trip, this was in the days before cell phones and stuff. There was a voicemail on our answering machine, and it said, "Hey, Sam, someone is sick on Broadway. We need you to come to Broadway and be in the Broadway show. Can you call us back?" And then there was another message the next day saying, "We really need you." And then another message the next day saying, "I guess we're going to have to move on." And so I never got to do Les Mis on Broadway, but I did get to do other stuff. I did The Sound of Music on Broadway. I was in an off-Broadway show called I Can Get It For You Wholesale, which was nominated for all sorts of awards. I did a lot of great theater projects. I just never got to do Les Mis on Broadway because of voicemails.
Well, my question about that is, one of the things that we as children, when we get into theater, is such a cool experience, and I'll speak for you, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is that children are often treated as equals in the theater. You're just one of the cast, and so the adults in the cast don't treat you like a kid all the time in a good way. They give you the respect of a professional actor. And so I'm curious so that experience as a young performer, did that instill a sense in you that you still continue to at this day in professionalism, in terms of being considered part of the group, being given the respect of a professional actor, even at a young age? What was that? What was that feeling like as a kid?
It was so cool. And you're exactly right. Nobody treats you like a kid. You're just part of the cast. And yeah, for the most part, it's super empowering for a kid. And it's amazing to see what kids can do if you just say, like, we trust you. We believe in your talent. Do your thing. I got so confident, and especially at just talking to people and being a person around other people. So much so that after that Les Mis tour, I was on tour for like a year and a half. I lived in Virginia at the time, and I went back to a public school in Virginia, and I was there for about 3 months, and I was like, I can't talk to kids anymore. Like, they're real boring. They're super boring, and they haven't traveled the world, and they aren't fabulous adults who are amazing singers and performers. And, I didn't like them very much. Yeah. It didn't make me annoying around them. I just was like, this is not for me anymore. And so my mom tried to find me a job in New York, and we got me this Sound of Music job in New York. And so I got to move and continue the dream. But for sure, yeah, as a young person, I was emotionally mature, I think, and certainly more confident, more charismatic than I would have been otherwise, but also I didn't super fit in with regular kids.
Yeah.
And that's something I tried to change, or fix anyway. When I went to college, I went to the University of Virginia, which is in a beautiful town, Charlottesville, Virginia. It's sort of in the middle of nowhere, and it's all just regular kids being regular college kids. And I realized when I got to be 18 that I had never really hung out with regular kids for my entire teenage life. And I was like, this is probably something I should do. And so I went to a real college, and I had a real college experience. And that helped sort of fill in the gaps to the stuff that I didn't have in my teenage years. Like, they would always be talking about music that they listen to, and I'd be like, I just listen to show tunes.
Right.
So I got an education that way too. But yeah, it was super cool. And theater, not just adults, theater adults. It was crazy. I was around theater adults as a kid. They were all making out with each other, boys and boys, girls and girls, and then they would switch, and I'd be like, and they'd walk around the dressing room half naked, and I was like, this is insane. This is what it's like to be an adult. That's so cool. It was such a great glimpse of what being a grown-up could be.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that all sounds very exciting, and wow, what a life you've lived. Of course, you know, the name of this show is Harder to Breathe, and we talk about some of the challenges that we face in terms of along the journey, what we have to overcome, and even what we're dealing with currently. And there's a couple things that stand out to me as potentially things we could talk about in that regard, and you can tell me if there's other things I'm not aware of. But I know that you and your now wife were in New York at 9/11 and very close to the location when it happened. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Sure. It's a super long story, so I'll try to abridge for you. But yes, we lived across the street in like the closest residential building to the Twin Towers. We were home when it happened. It was obviously horrible. We saw the planes hit, or we heard the first plane hit. We saw the second plane hit. We were there. We were just leaving the building when the first tower fell. So we were in the big cloud of dust that you've seen on TV and ran for our lives and tripped over things and people, and eventually were evacuated to New Jersey on a ferry, and eventually learned that our apartment had imploded from the force of the first tower falling, had sort of blown in all of our windows. And when we eventually did get back into the apartment, it was just decimated, just disgusting, with ash and dust and hunks of melted metal and glass. And also the sprinklers had all gone off, so everything was wet and destroyed. And so we lost our place where we were living. And, you know, it was bad. It was a bad day. I'm going to go on record.
Whoa, hot take.
Controversial take. I'm going to say 9/11 was a bad day. But weirdly for us, there was a lot of silver linings in our ordeal, which I think is just, it's good in general. Like every ordeal has some good thing. If you can get through the ordeal, it has some good sort of lesson or payoff or something, in my experience. But this one for us was particularly fruitful. I had bought my wife a camera for her birthday, and while we were running from the disaster, she snapped a whole bunch of pictures, and those pictures ended up being very good. And the pictures ended up, she got the cover of the New York Times on that Sunday, and a cover of USA Today a few days after that. And she was hired by the Associated Press to be a photographer. So her career changed on that day instantly. She was an accountant working at the World Financial Center on September 10th. And then starting September 11th, she was a professional photographer. Yeah. And now she's a award-winning cinematographer, and now a director, a film director and a TV director. And it really changed the trajectory of her life in an incredibly unexpected way. And for us, just as two young lovers, we also, as we were fleeing, we made promises to each other. I think before that, we were definitely together, but I think there was like this thing where her parents wanted me to convert to Catholicism, and I was like, hell no. But then afterward, I think even on the day while we were cowering in fear, waiting for a ferry boat to pick us up, I was like, if we get through this, I will do whatever you want. I'll convert to any religion you want. Let's just not be apart anymore. And it was special to go through that together. And not just that day, but the days afterwards and the weeks afterwards together. And it, made us inseparable forever. So that was good, but everything else on the day was bad.
Got it.
So did you convert?
I did.
Okay.
I'll admit on this podcast, I was crossing my fingers the whole time. But yes, I went through the process in order to get married in a Catholic church. But yeah, anything to get married to the lady for sure.
That's amazing. Well, it does sound like amazing sort of fortuitous things came from that experience, but I imagine that there's got to be some emotional residual effect of just the trauma of that. I mean, is it something that you carry with you in terms of how you relate to life and the world, or is it just something you've kind of put in its place?
I mean, it certainly was something we talked about and dealt with for years afterwards. You know, I don't, for the first year. Duck, were you living in New York still?
I was in Queens, and then watched the whole thing from my roof, and still can't watch the video packages every year and things. It still is a little too like, I don't want to, I've never been to ground zero since then. It's one of those things for me. It's still a touchy thing.
It is. And I don't know if you remember, but like there was this smell in New York for
ozone,
a year or more. And whenever you would get a waft of that smell, you'd be like, oh shit, it just happened. You know, like it's still there. And it's all anyone wanted to talk about for a year, maybe 2-3 years afterwards. It was on everybody's mind, and they wanted to know my experiences and stuff. So weirdly, we talked it out over the next 3 or 5 years. So it's definitely not a day-to-day thing that comes up anymore for us. But every once in a while, we get reminded on the anniversary or whenever we see old movies with the Twin Towers in it. Yeah. Obviously, it reminds us. But and definitely it has affected our relationship with each other in the long term. I don't think day to day it's the thing that we think about most anymore, though. Yeah, we've compartmentalized it and moved on.
Right.
So you and your wife have both had a lot of success since then, and she's, as a photographer, cinematographer, director, you in all of these areas of voice acting and voice directing that you've mentioned. But just last year, you had a cancer diagnosis in, of all places, your mouth and throat. Mm-hmm. As a voice actor, I have to imagine that must have been, well, maybe secondary to, am I going to be okay? But a part of the bigger picture, just a terrifying feeling of, well, you tell me, what was that experience like, and how are you dealing with it today?
Yeah, it was very surprising. It happened about a year ago, maybe just over a year ago. I think I was diagnosed at the end of March, so like 14 months ago. And then I had surgery in April, and then I had radiation May and June. So I'm not even a year past radiation. And it was crazy. It happened so fast. I had this weird problem with my taste buds. I couldn't taste sweet things anymore. And then I started to get like an itchy throat, and I was like, this sounds weird. And I went to an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and she was like, oh yeah, you have cancer. And it was so wild too, because she shoved a camera down my nose. She looked around and she was like, I don't see anything. And she's like, you know what? Can I just touch your tonsil with my finger? And I was like, sure. And she reached back there and she touched it. And she's like, oh yeah, that's a tumor. And I was like non-cancerous tumor?
The good kind of tumor, right?
She was like, nah, there's no such thing. And I was like, how do you know? And she's like, I've been doing this for 20 years. She's like, we'll get a biopsy and everything, but for sure you have cancer. And then so I left, and we had to wait a few days for results. And then she called and she's like, yeah, I was right. I told you. But she was like, hey, good news is most people don't die from this. And we got it early, and it's probably going to be okay. And so I think knowing that going into it was a little bit reassuring. However, yeah, like you said, Ryan, it's like it was in my throat.
Yeah.
And then they had to go in and cut stuff out, which is not good for a voice actor. Mm-hmm. But it's amazing how fast you sort of decide, or not decide, at least for me anyway, it was pretty quick that I was like, I don't need to be a voice actor anymore. I will just throw away that whole, my entire identity. I would rather live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was kind of okay with it. I was worried about projects that were ongoing. You know, we have this cartoon series that I'm in and need to be a voice in. So I was worried about that. I was worried about income, and I love to perform. It's part of who I am. So I was worried about that. But I pretty quickly was like, I guess I'm not a voice actor anymore. Okay, well, move on to something else. And I think weirdly, I had been primed for that sort of leap by the COVID pandemic. Like, I feel like the COVID pandemic, in a small way, forced everybody to re-examine, like, hey, if you can't be the thing that you are, what would you be? Like, because you can't, like, hey, you know that job that you have, you can't go there anymore. And that school that you go to, you don't go there anymore. And all your friends, you can't see them anymore. Now who are you? And so I feel like for a year or 2 years, everyone in America had to sort of go through that on small levels or big levels. And I feel like it was a good practice for me anyway, to be like, you know, hey, what if you can't talk anymore? And so you just kind of have to be like, okay, well, I'll figure something else out. I'll write, I guess, or I'll be a dancer. I don't know. But luckily for me, over the past year, and really only over the past couple of months, my voice has really rebounded. I had an amazing surgeon who did some tricks to try to keep my voice as good as it could be. He took great pains there's a specific nerve that he said he was going to have to cut, but after the surgery, he was like, I was able to save it. He like, I guess it's so gross, but like, he like pulled it out and he scraped it and then he put it back in so that it would be okay. My mouth is certainly not the same, and I'm not as good as I used to be at certain things. My stamina is way down. I can only do like a session for like an hour and a half now instead of 4. And I have to do crazy amounts of tongue exercises and vocal warm-ups and inhaling saline solution and all kinds of stuff to like keep my voice okay. But I'm able to continue performing and continue doing the stuff I love, which is, to me anyway, it's a bonus. It's better than I could have hoped and better than I expected. So trying to look on the positives.
Wow. Do you guys think, I wonder, you know, this exercise that you described that we kind of all had to go through in the pandemic and then kind of prepared you for this. Do you guys think that our minds doing that sort of identity working through of like, well, then who am I in this situation, or how do I move forward and who do I become? Is that a situation where life comes along and sort of slaps you in the face and puts things into perspective? And so you're forced to think about things in a way you hadn't before? Or is it some of that sort of compartmentalization that you described of, well, here's something that's extremely painful and I don't even want to think about what this is going to be. So like my mind is just going to create, well, I got to shift over here now. I got to think about this. I can't think about that. Or is it a combination of the two?
It must be a combination. I'm sure I compartmentalize and deflect so much in my life. It's probably, it's why I'm a jokester guy and try to be silly. For sure, there's a fair amount of that. But I think for me, and probably for everyone on this call, we've all been rejected so many times in various ways, either as an actor or a project that we've tried to do that didn't go for whatever reason. I've been used to rejection and shifting priorities and shifting momentum and shifting identity, I think, for so long, that I think it's a good muscle to have, to be able to do that. I don't know. It's probably good and bad, right? Like, because on the one hand, you want to be able to take defeat and accept setbacks and be able to somehow fight through it and move on to something else. That's a good thing. But then there's another part where, like, if you're so used to defeat and so used to rejection and so ready to just shift to another thing, then you're not as passionate about anything.
Only one foot in, one toe dipped in. Yeah.
Yeah. So I probably suffer a little bit from that, where I don't let myself get fully passionate about something unless I'm sure it's not going away.
Right. So you're not going to break my heart. I'm already halfway out the door.
Yeah. I'm sure that has affected relationships and things over the years as well. This is probably something I should be in therapy for, but I'm not. So I'm talking to you guys about it.
I think it also, you know, for guys, the three of us are the same age. And so the pandemic happened to coincide with us being in our early to mid 40s, where I think a lot of those questions come up anyway. Speaking personally, I've dealt with that rejection that you're talking about, Sam, since I was 20 years old. And yet it started to become more difficult in recent years. Ryan and I talk about it on the show a lot. I don't know if I have the stamina for it for much longer. Partially because it's getting harder with the strike and the work is drying up. And so there isn't as much. So I feel like I'm rejected more, you know? And so I don't know if it's a combination of, like I said, where I am in my life, where I'm taking those things a little more personally and they hurt a little bit more. And so I'm more actively thinking, what else could I do? What, you know, the same way that you talked about. So I do think it's a combination of all those things. And I wonder if where we are in our lives dictates a lot of that. I mean, we have kids, Sam, you know, and we want to be able to provide for them. And if I have to see a trend over the past 3 years of my career, I have to look 3 years ahead and say, well, if that's where I'm going to be in 3 years, I got to make a decision now to make a left turn. So it's a tough call because you have to put some blind faith in yourself and your career, but you also have to read the tea leaves, you know, as they're going. And that's an impossible thing to do. So
yeah, especially with other people you're responsible for now and you care about. And it's, it can add to the stress for sure. I for the last year anyway, I have been just in like emergency mode, triage mode, just trying to get through it and then figure out what I'm capable of doing and slowly starting to feel like myself again. So for me currently, any bit of rejection, I would not give two shits about because like I'm here. Yeah. I'm here and I still have a family and I made it through. However, I totally get where most of my friends are in the business right now, desperately trying to get a gig, desperately trying to keep afloat in this downturn. And you know, with political turmoil and social turmoil everywhere, it's like, it's bad out there. I've sort of gotten in trouble a little bit with a couple of friends who like, I've stopped kind of disengaged with the news and I've stopped listening to the radio. I've stopped trying to comment on things online. And when people bring up political stuff, I'm like, I'm out. I gotta worry about me right now. Yeah. And a couple of my friends have said like, you can't do that. you can't disengage like that. One friend, she told me, she was like, you cannot disengage. It is your responsibility to engage. And I was like, why? And she's like, because you're a white man with a platform. And I was like, shit, you're right.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, all right, I guess I gotta get back into it, but it's hard to muster up the cosmic energy to do that when I just got through this thing. I'm just starting to feel like myself again. I'm just starting to re-engage with friendships and going out and seeing people again. I've only been able to really like taste food again, like for a few months. for most of the last year, food tasted bad. And so like, if people were like, hey, you want to go to dinner? I'd be like, no, it's going to taste bad.
Yeah.
But now food tastes good again. And I'm just happy to start living again. So to think about serious stuff like economic downturns and stuff, I can't do it.
You should be able to
I'm just sort of kidding myself.
You should be able to pin a comment or something like, cut me some slack. I had cancer.
Yes.
Leave me alone for a year.
I've used that enough. I feel like I can't use it anymore now. It's sad.
Well, it's interesting that you made that connection with, the state of the world and how you're dealing with that. I think we're all dealing with that in one way or another at this point. And there's this fine line. We talk a lot about resilience, being able to deal with hardships and challenges in a productive way, turn a negative into a positive. And sometimes that means just pivoting in the way that you're describing, like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to figure out something else. And instead of wallowing in the pain or the discomfort of the thing that I can't do anymore, finding something I can do. And that's a healthy, productive way to find a solution to a problem. But then there's also this just coping mechanism that we have where it's just like, that's too painful. I'm going to shut it down. I can't deal with it. And I think we're all like, every time you turn on the news, it's just nothing but more bad news. Mm-hmm. And I'm dealing with that. It's like, I've given advice to my clients. It's like, well, here's this thing you're engaging in every morning that's putting you in a bad mood, that's making you depressed, that's making you more fearful and anxious, and then you're carrying that through your day. How is that helping you? How is that helping anything? Unless you're somebody who's literally going on TV and talking about this stuff and you need to be informed that day, or somebody who's, organizing a campaign to elect someone or some program or whatever. And so it's an interesting connection between that and what you were describing in terms of like, where is that line between what is resilient, what is an adaptive way to deal with something painful and negative, and what is just avoiding the problem? What is just not letting it in and just compartmentalizing it?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Like that's the $1 million question. And I think for everyone, you need a way to engage. You need to engage, even if it's painful, but you also need a way to blow off the steam that you accumulate from your engagement.
Yeah.
And for me, and for probably both of you, that venting has been through performance, or creative output. And I'm so lucky that I get to do this, even though it's a geeky D&D game. I get to do it every week. I get to sit with my best friends and play make-em-ups and laugh with each other and do emotional scenes with them where we cry occasionally, and even though it's imaginary, endure these heroic battles, where we're fighting monsters and we might die at any moment. And even though it's all silly make-em-ups, it really is so therapeutic to vent whatever accumulated emotional baggage you have for the week. And I get to do it on the reg. I get to do this every week. It's so wonderful. It's been the best therapy ever. And I've been doing it for 10 years now. They also, on my show, they let me, I do the ad every week for our show. We get a sponsor every week, and I get to I'm responsible for doing our sponsorship ad every week, which sounds like a chore, but I've made it my favorite part of the week, because basically I just get to write a comedy skit every week and perform it. And yes, it's advertising, but for me, it's been the highlight of my week, because I get to write anything I want, and they have
much
to put
to
it
the
on.
chagrin of the advertiser sometimes,
Yes,
I would imagine.
Oh yeah, some of the advertisers are like, "What the fuck are you doing?" But it's sort of a known thing now that Sam's going to do some weird thing at the beginning of the show. So it's been this very regular creative output for me that has definitely kept me going and kept me, re-engaging in my life and my creativity and stuff. So yeah, I feel like it's important for everybody in any walk of life to have some sort of way to vent their baggage, whether that's in a therapy session every week or sports or, something that some amazing hobby that they do, or playing D&D with their friends every week. Luckily, I've turned my hobby into a career.
Yeah.
I wish everyone were so lucky, but yeah, if they're not, they should find something.
Well, Ryan alluded to, at the beginning, talking about the D&D community itself has sort of long been heralded as this safe haven for a lot of people who felt alone, who felt other growing up in the 80s. I didn't play. I only saw the backlash of the Dungeons and Dragons is going to make kids kill themselves. Yeah. But obviously that's a community that you are now both a part of and embraced by. When you said that when you got this cancer diagnosis and you were worried, was that community there for you? And were you specifically the people you play with? But I would imagine that they must have been 100% in your corner and said, take the time you need and whatever you need to help you get through it.
Yes, of course. Everyone was super, super supportive. And I ended up, my friends were super supportive and they gave me as much time as I wanted. I ended up I had this character on this ongoing storyline, and I ended up killing the character 3 days before my surgery, which was very emotional because I knew that I was going to be out for maybe 3 months, maybe forever. And so I wanted to sort of end that story, and we figured out a way for my character to die in a very heroic way. It was very cathartic, but very emotional. Everyone was crying and stuff. But then when I was gone, I ended up doing this thing that was actually incredible. I had to go to radiation treatments every day, 5 days a week, every morning. And I asked my friends, I just kind of threw it out there. I was like, because people were texting me saying is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can do? And I started to say, yes, you can drive me to my radiation session. It will take you 15 minutes to get there, 15 minutes to get back. It's only an hour and a half of your time, but it's something you can do. And I had this rotating schedule of friends drive me in the morning to these sessions. And, it was great because it gave them a chance to feel like they helped. But it also, it gave me one-on-one time with friends that I never would have hung out with. Friends from Tara Sands from New York. I see her occasionally, but we don't hang out enough. And she drove me to radiation in the morning. Incredible. I got to spend an hour and a half with her, catch up on her life and spend wonderful time together. Lots of friends that I would never get to see in such a vulnerable place. And it made me think, maybe this is what your podcast is. I don't even know. But some of the conversations I had with people on the drive there or the drive back were these incredible conversations about how we love each other and what we mean to each other. And it was so cool and stuff that you would never talk about otherwise. It's like a conversation you would have with a friend if you were like, hey man, I'm dying. Let's go out to dinner one last time. That kind of stuff. And it was so cool. And it really brought me closer to people that I hadn't been close with in such a long time. And I feel like it's something we should all do. I don't know how. It's really morbid, but I feel like you should talk about death with your friends because it brings out stuff. And you talk about, hey, remember that moment we had together? Hey, remember that time when we were younger and we spent together? And what do you want to do in the future? And I don't know, it was just so cool to have those kinds of conversations. I would love to have more of them. Maybe that's what this show is. I don't know. I haven't listened to enough episodes to know, but maybe that's what this is.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. It sounds like you've been forced to do a lot of soul searching in terms of what really matters to you, what's important. And you described this process that began perhaps back in the pandemic, and then through this health crisis, stripping away a lot of the things that are meaningful, but are things that can go away. And what are you left with? I'm curious what that process has left you with. What is the takeaway? If you had to say, like, this is who I am, but if you strip away the career, if you strip away even the sort of passion or the purpose that I feel from the things that I pursue in my life, like, what am I left with? Who am I underneath all of that?
Yeah, that's such a big question, right? I think the thing, when I was in the most pain, when I was in the most discomfort, when people were taking care of me, I think the thing that I lost most and I missed most was just making people laugh and laughing with people. I did not feel funny. I didn't have a sense of humor at all. I did not feel like me for many months. And I think that was like, career aside and not from a professional level, but I didn't feel like laughing at all. And that was the worst part. Like I would take these walks with my wife every morning because the doctor prescribed me to. He was like, you have to walk every day, at least a mile. I mean, it helps with healing and stuff. And so we would take these long walks every morning. And she would talk a lot because I couldn't. It hurt. And I would just kind of listen. And then every once in a while, there was one day in particular where I just stopped walking and I kind of collapsed in the middle of the street crying because I was like, I can't even talk to you. I can't have a conversation with you. It's the worst because I can make her laugh so easily. And I think that was the worst part, just not being able to just joke with my friends. And I think that's who I am at the base. I just want to be with my friends and I want to make them laugh. That's it.
Amazing. So where would you say you're in the process now? Or is this something that you're looking at as like, I'm still in the middle of this, or it's sort of becoming in my rear view to a certain extent? Like, where are you?
As much as I would like it to be in the rear view, I still am reminded daily that I'm not. That I'm still in it. Like, when people ask, I don't want to be a burden. So I'm always like, yeah, I'm fine. 100% back to normal. I'm invincible.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to worry. But yeah, I'm still not 100%. Like my voice is still not where I would love it to be. I'm able to get through things. Like I can sing again. That's great.
Wow.
But it takes me so long. I sing songs on my animated series. My character, it's such a nerdy thing, but he's a bard, so he can cast magic through music. So in every episode of our animated series, he sings. Amazing, so fun. But it's been so hard to sing because I can't sing. But now I can again, which is fantastic. But I can only really do like 3 or 4 takes of a song, and that's it for the day. And I sometimes have to wait like 2 or 3 days before I can try again. And that sucks. And doing all these exercises every day sucks. And I have to reach in my mouth and massage like my tonsils and stuff just to like loosen everything up. It sucks. I have to massage my scar. That sucks. Everything sucks. But it's better than the alternative. And it's just now part of the routine, I guess. I'm sure after doing this podcast, my voice is going to be scratchy for the rest of the day. That sucks. But it's important that I talk about it. It's important that I do stuff, and every day I'm getting stronger. So yeah, I have a positive, optimistic outlook, and I'm going to be fine. I lived.
Well, we certainly appreciate that you're willing to talk about it for an hour with us here. And this has been amazing. You know, I'm always so impressed, even when these kinds of situations are so difficult, what you see in a human being as they walk through something like what you've been walking through in terms of resilience and fortitude and being able to find a way to change perspective and adapt and realize, like what you just said, like, yeah, this sucks, but it's better than the alternative. And, you know, even I hear a little bit of gratitude in there, you know, for what this whole experience is doing for your ability to sort of re-examine what matters to you. And that's just a testament to, I mean, to sound a little corny, the human spirit, you know. It's just like, that's in all of us. I mean, if we don't know what we're capable of until we're tested to that level. And I hope that, you know, most of us aren't tested in those ways, but that's what life hands us. You know, sometimes things happen that create these opportunities that come along to really figure out who we are, what we're made of.
Yeah, that's important too. You're right. There is gratitude in there. I should probably focus on that more than I do. I kind of feel like I wasn't super strong in this, but I think maybe I was. I gotta give myself that.
It sounds like it to me.
Yeah, when I was going through it, I was like, I'm pretty bad at this. I'm not used to struggling. I'm not used to being in pain. I complained so much. I'm annoyed my wife so much. So when I was really in the thicket of it, I was like, I'm bad at this. There's people who are going through way worse than this, and I can't even get through this. But maybe I did. Maybe I did okay. Maybe I should give myself some flowers and praise myself for getting through it.
Damn right.
I think we're all allowed to have a bad day or a bad week or a bad month or a bad 6 months if you're going through cancer treatments.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, look, being grumpy, everyone has to go through a process. And when you're tested to that level, I mean, there's going to be times when, you know, you're going to be not your best self. And certainly I would not judge you too harshly for your worst day in regards to that. I'm sure that your wife understands, you know, that this was a real challenge on a lot of levels, but it's amazing to see, you know, you do have that sense of humor about you, and you're reflective, even being just less than a year out from this, in a way that is impressive to me now. And I didn't know you a year ago, but it's really cool to see where you're at and how you're walking through this today.
Thank you.
And I do get that. I feel that gratitude. I mean, it seems to me that you certainly, with, you know, talking about your friends giving you rides, but your family, your community supporting you, it's there. So I don't think you need to flagellate yourself for not having enough of that. I think it's definitely there. And I'm sure that there's a tonsil massage joke in here somewhere that I can help as well, but I won't do it because we're professional, serious podcasters.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. By the way, I'll just give my quick PSA to anybody listening.
Yeah.
If you haven't had your HPV shot, go get it. It's never too late. Even if you're an adult, you can prevent this cancer easily by just getting vaccinated. It's the one kind of cancer you can actually prevent. So go get it.
Good to know.
All right. Well, that's a positive note to end on. Sam, thank you so much for your time and using your voice in this way to be an advocate today. And it really was a meaningful conversation for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Please check out Sam on Critical Role, available on Twitch, on YouTube, and on your own streaming platform, which is called
Beacon.tv.
There you go. And also The Legend of Vox Machina is on Amazon. And you got a new show coming out later this year, you said, right?
Yeah, it's called Mighty Nine. It'll be out later this year. We're not sure when, but it's going to be really good.
Very exciting. Well, Sam, thank you so much for your time, man. It's great to reconnect with you. We haven't seen each other in years recently for the same reasons that we've talked about. Our lives.
Maybe you should come drive me to something.
I mean, you know, I heard you say morning. Mornings aren't really good for me. So if you could get a cancer that's an afternoon cancer, I'm there for you, buddy.
Next one, I promise.
Cool.
All right. Sam Riegel has been our guest on today's episode of the Harder to Breathe podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We have new episodes every Tuesday. Check it out. We'll see you next time right here on the Harder to Breathe podcast.